if I have symptoms showing up in my nose, my ears, my mouth, my tongue, etc., those can be indicators of something that's going on that's a little bit deeper, that might be tied to either some of these organs or some of these elements, which again are also tied to emotions, and it is reflected from nature as well. Health coach. Happy Traditional Chinese Medicine Tuesday. This is a new thing that I'm starting. Today's discussion might be a little bit esoteric, and I'm definitely going to try to keep it at a very high level, so hopefully it's not going to get too crazy for you. So it was highly requested that I do a video on how nature presents itself in the physical human body. I'm going to be explaining this using the 5 elements theory. This stuff is actually like really crazy complex, so I am going to be simplifying things. I am by no means an expert in this, so let's get right on into it. The 5 elements theory basically starts out with the idea that there are 5 primary elements that are pervasive not only in our bodies but also throughout all of nature. Okay, so we have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. These are the 5 primary elements that I'm going to be discussing today. Each one of these elements also corresponds to organ systems in the body, as well as emotions, processes, etc. Today I'm going to be looking strictly at the physical side of things, like what organ systems are associated with what elements and how do those associations kind of show up in the physical body. So we'll start with the element of wood. Wood is an element that is inherently expansive in nature. So wood, and I'm not referring to this specifically as wood in nature, though that is one way to look at it, and this is how, again, nature is reflected in the body. When I say wood, I'm not referring specifically to the bark on a tree. I am referring to the essence of all that is wood, which is, for example, a seed that's planted growing into something larger. So wood, the essence of wood, is kind of the beginning of the creation, so to speak. This element is very closely tied to the liver as well as the gallbladder. It also ties to the nerves as well as the eyes. Now, I think this is really interesting because the concept of vision is kind of encapsulated by this. The initial seeds, your vision for like life or what you want, or like vision is the inception of everything. It's kind of like the creation. It's like the seed of the whole spark. And I really think it's interesting that it's tied to the eyes. Another interesting correlation here is that oftentimes people who have jaundice, which is actually a condition of the liver, it will appear physically in the eyes. On a more personal note, something that I have just found really interesting, my mom has a lot of vision issues. She's actually blind legally, and it's fascinating to me that she also has all of these unexplained conditions and issues with her liver that no doctor has been able to figure out why that's the case. These two systems are interrelated, and they do connect with each other, and they are an expression of the same quote-unquote energy or the same quote-unquote element. The direction that's associated with wood is like an outwards. It's a very expansive. So again, the concept of vision here really applies. And I'm gonna draw arrows for each one so that you can see sort of what they represent. Okay, don't kill me, perfectionist. I tilted the camera because I noticed like, oh, it was a little off center, so we're good now. I'm sorry if that was bothering you. So the next topic that we have, the next element we have is fire. Fire is most closely associated with the heart, as well as the pericardium, kind of like the surrounding areas and organs of the heart, as well as the small intestines. If you're familiar with Chinese medicine and the concept of the triple burner, that is also included here. But again, I'm gonna try to keep this really a little bit more on the Western side of things so that it's more relatable to people who aren't as familiar with the Eastern side of everything. So the inherent nature of fire, it has a very upwards or rising energy to it. This element is also closely associated with the arteries as well as your blood, and is tied to the tongue. So being tied to the tongue, it's also associated with the concept of communication. When we look at like eyes as being related to vision, so to speak, fire is communication. So that's like, I see a vision, I have a vision. And then the concept of fire within the body is the concept of like, I'm speaking this out loud. This is like, I am creating this. This is basically, this is a huge stage of transformation. I forgot to mention that each one of these is also associated with a season, which might make a little bit more sense. So wood is associated with the season of spring. Again, kind of like the seed of creation, beginning of a new cycle, etc. That's kind of like the wood element. The fire element is associated with summer. So again, heat, rising, transformation, all that kind of crazy stuff. The next element we have is the element of earth. So earth is associated with the spleen and the pancreas as well as the stomach. Again, I think the concept of consolidation is very interesting. You could also look at this as like the stomach is the containing of the food, or the fermenting of the food. It's kind of consolidating your nutrients and holding it into a space. And this earth is kind of like that, sort of like a holding. As noted again, it is an in-between, so it's not associated with summer, or it's not associated with necessarily fall or summer. It's sort of like the late summer going into fall. It is also tied to the in-betweener time between all the seasons, but that's gonna get way too complex, so I'm not gonna get into that. So again, as noted, the earth is sort of like the holding stage, or the consolidating stage. And this is also closely tied to the muscles and the mouth. So the next element we have is metal, which is really closely tied to the fall season. So the energy here, again, is kind of a continuation of the consolidation from the earth energy. So the metal organs, so to speak, are also about kind of holding on to what you need and letting go of that which you don't. So the organs that are associated are the lungs and the large intestine. Lungs basically have the job of taking in a bunch of air, holding on to what you need, i.e. oxygen, and releasing all that you don't need. And then the large intestine is one of the final stages in the digestive process, which is again responsible for holding on to the minerals and nutrients that you need, as well as distributing those throughout the body. So there is kind of a retention and distribution element that's important here. So again, the metal element is related to the fall, as well as has a sort of contracting energy. Your skin, tissue, and nose are also closely tied to the metal element. And the final element we have that I'm going to go over today is water. Water has an it's also very closely tied to winter. And the essence of water is reflected within the kidneys as well as the urinary bladder. So the kidney's responsibility in the body is to make sure that you have basically a proper water balance. It does work hand in hand with the liver in terms of detoxification, and this element is also associated with reproductive needs. So this is, at this point between water and wood, this is sort of where the life cycle, quote unquote, ends begins. So this is like the final stage, or the quote unquote death before new life. This element also shows up in your DNA, as well as your bones, and your teeth, which are an extension of your bones, and your ears. I think that one is super interesting, because if you look at a picture of like a human kidney and you look at human ears, they definitely don't look dissimilar. So I hope this is helpful in seeing some ways in which again, not the physical parts of nature, but the essence of a lot of different natural properties, like the essence of all that is wood, and the essence of all that is fire, earth, metal, water, how they kind of show up in the human body, and also just in general, the concept of the interrelation between these. You know, a lot of people who have issues with spleen and stomach, like if there's an imbalance within the spleen and stomach, we'll see symptoms pervading in the mouth. Or similarly, people who are seeing a lot of issues with like the lungs and the large intestine may have issues showing up on their skin. Like I know a lot of people who have like digestive issues, myself included, and will have a lot of skin related issues that can be, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but they can be an indicator. Like if I have symptoms showing up in my nose, my ears, my mouth, my tongue, etc., those can be indicators of something that's going on that's a little bit deeper, that might be tied to either some of these organs or some of these elements, which again are also tied to emotions. I'm not getting into any of that today. I did want to try to keep this as simple as physically possible, while also just letting you know there is a very intricate way in which the human body is connected, and it is reflected from nature as well. Thank you guys so much for your time. If you haven't already, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. If you're watching this on Instagram, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. Make sure you go follow my health page. Both are under the handle Alexa B Health Coach. I really appreciate your guys' time. Thanks for diving into this weird, funky shit with me. It's been a blast. Cheers.